It's kind of a continuation of what I've been doing for the last year, I guess. A lot of places in kind of the outskirts of Brooklyn where there's, a lot of decay and things are falling apart and there's a lot of, new growth, and it's a nice aesthetic that I've been getting into for a while. The assemblage painting is a pier in Brooklyn, right? And it's got a tree that's growing out of it. All this flotsam has washed up ashore, and it's really just a collection of junk, but it's got a tree growing out of it, and that was like the thing that inspired it to be a painting for me. Coming back home to Colorado, I was immediately struck by these old homesteads that are around, and I've kind of always known about them. I grew up here and they've always been around, but I've never really thought to paint them. There's just these old decrepit shacks everywhere around here. So you go hiking in the mountains and you see what these guys built. There's a stark contrast between those and the suburbs, all the new stuff that's being built, that's been kind of built in the last 15 years, which is what I really notice around here, because I grew up here, but I haven't lived here in 15 years. And I guess they're both things happening, and it seemed, it was just kind of interesting to me, and it seemed to kind of follow the same process of going out and kind of poking around these old places. A big part of this show, for example, was this hike that I took with my mom. I went up in the woods, and she was like, "Oh, there's this really cool old homestead that's falling apart. When I saw it, I thought of you. I just, I need to take you there." And we were hiking, and she took me to this place, and it's a hike called Fraser Meadow, and one of the paintings I think is called Fraser Meadow. It's also from that hike. And, I just kind of got there and read about it and took some photos and was checking it out. And then I got back to my studio and I started reading about other homesteaders and kind of their experience. And I just, I'd been reading a lot about how, everyone seems to be moving to these places in Colorado to do this kind of same thing, to have the opportunity to kind of make this imaginary happy life for themselves. But it's really been hard for a lot of people around here. There's been kind of a lot of failure. Getting back to the studio, I was thinking about these people moving here and what brings people to Colorado and why do people come here. And so that drives the research element, I guess. But then as far as the images go, it's ad hoc. I can find something that I like. Some of the suburbs, I was really trying to figure out how to paint these suburbs in an interesting way, because they're so ugly. I couldn't really find any. I took a million pictures and stitched them together and tried to create these long horizontal compositions, which usually is a good way to kind of portray a line of houses or something. I'd been doing that with the cityscapes. And I found a couple of compositions that worked, and then I just resorted to Google Earth painting. I'm not very true to photographs at all.
Yeah.
So, but they're good reference points. So, I definitely still use those. There's one painting in this show here, and it's called Corral.
Uh-huh.
And it's like this fence this old falling apart fence from a homestead, and it kind of vanishes off into a suburban horizon. And that's the fence part I kind of took from a photograph, and after I'd been painting all these suburbs, I pretty much knew what a suburb looks like from afar, so I just kind of painted that in the background. And so it's kind of it's both. There's nothing too direct. So maybe I could just say this: a day in the life of me is I go out and take pictures, and usually I'm a bad photographer, and I take them back to the studio, and I start to find little interesting, compelling bits of structure that I could use in a painting. And I don't ever worry too much about the exactness of it, or but it's a guide. It's a tool. As far as the research goes, a lot of it happens, I'll be reading books or watching the news, and things will kind of come to me as I'm painting. So the whole series becomes a giant puzzle, that starts with probably the first photograph and ends with, maybe 12 or 15 paintings.